I hereby call the Des Moines City Council regular meeting for May 11th to order, and with that, I'll have Councilmember Pennington lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Councilmember Pennington. Let the record note that 6 of the council members are here. Councilmember Steinmetz was hoping to attend via phone, but he is unable to do so. Do I have a motion to excuse?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. All right, with that, we have a little bit of a special thing. Would our harbor master, Mr. Scott Wilkins, come forth to the podium, please? And try to do it a little faster than hobbling.
Thank you, Mayor, City Manager, Deputy Mayor, and Council. Scott Wilkins with the City of Des Moines Marina, as you say. But tonight, for those that don't know, I've been married to our Chief Administrative Officer for 40 years, and tonight is her birthday. So every year I take this opportunity to wish her happy birthday. But as you can see, on crutches, delivering flowers doesn't work very well. So I pulled the dad card. So I'd like to introduce our son Bradley and his wife Dana to bring Mom some flowers.
Does she have to do it out here in front of the camera and everything? Oh, she's on? Good. I had to make sure.
Our little son, yeah. Anyway, thank you all. Just appreciate it very much.
All right, thank you. All right, are there any correspondence?
No correspondence, Mayor.
Is there any public comment?
No public
signed up? Okay, so nobody signed up for public comment. So I'm going to turn the floor to you, Michael. You have it.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. We have several items, hopefully are of interest to the council and our community. First off, we're going to invite Casey McLean, who's the Executive Director of SR3, our Marine Mammal Rescue organization that is located down at the marina. And Casey, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Oh, I get to go first. Thank you. Well, thank you for giving me a little bit of time on your agenda this evening. I really appreciate it. Again, my name is Casey McLean. I'm the Executive Director of Veterinary Nurse and a co-founder of this organization. SR3 is standing for Sea Life Response, Rehabilitation, and Research. For those of you that may not know about us already, we're a community-supported 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to promote the health and welfare of marine wildlife in the Pacific Northwest. Pretty broad thing that we do, and the way that we do that is through our 3 R's: the response, the rehabilitation, and the research. I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight, and also some of the progress we have made in the 2 years that we've been located in the Des Moines Marina. So why do we do this? Marine mammals are apex predators, meaning they're at the top of the food chain in the ocean. So they're actually a way for us to learn about the health of the ecosystem as a whole. By studying them, we're learning about the health of the entire food chain, a food chain that we rely on, our economy relies on, and that our health is intricately tied to, which I think COVID has shown us all how our health is tied to nature so directly these days. And the human issues, or the issues that humans create in our waterways, are not always obvious. It might look like, oh, this guy's just starving, but does he have a parasite due to the warming waters? Is his system suffering from toxins or antibiotic resistance? It's really hard to know unless you're studying these animals. So that's why we do, one of the reasons we do what we do. And that knowledge that we're gaining through the science that we do helps us understand the environment, how we can protect it, and eventually protect human health as well. There's a little bit of a misconception that if there's a lot of something, it's healthy. I think you can look at the human population and say that's not true always, and certainly can be the case for some of our marine mammals in the Salish Sea. So again, understanding their health is really what's going to help us understand the key to keeping this region as beautiful and protected as we all want it to be. And of course, wildlife has its own intrinsic value to our lives. That's why we live here. It's one of the reasons we love being on the water and near the water, is to be around these really incredible animals. And all these animals that we're helping are facing human-caused issues from entanglements, the lowered immune systems due to toxins I mentioned, warming waters, and these are all growing problems. They're not things that are getting better rapidly, and they take a lot of research and understanding behind what's going on to actually understand what the problems are that they're facing. They can change from year to year, and certainly takes a lot of knowledge to understand how to work with industry to find solutions to these problems. And we do that as well. So how we do what we do, in order to do these things and this research and this science, we needed a home. And that's where, back in 2017, I started looking all up and down the coast. The organization was started in 2011, very grassroots up until about 2016. And then we started looking for a home for the hospital. We were already doing response in our ambulance that some of you may have seen. We were already doing southern resident killer whale research at that point too. So we were already doing things, but we needed a home for this hospital to help animals that we can't help out in the wild. Thanks to the visionary support from community members and of course the city council, we found our home here in Des Moines in late 2019. And together we turned this parking lot into a new ocean conservation resource for the entire region, which is pretty exciting because we are first. We're the only specialized marine animal hospital in the entire Pacific Northwest. However, not in the country. There's lots of these facilities around, but we just didn't have one in this area. So it's exciting to be the first. I hope the city council and the community feels a point of pride for that. There's really visionary support for this, and you're doing something that is pretty incredible for these animals that they didn't have an option for before. Through helping the individuals at the facility, we're actually able to keep many more from ever needing help. That's why we do research. That's why we do a lot of the education and outreach that we do as well. So in the past, when these animals needed help from things like toxins and parasites, diseases, boat injuries, and entanglements, there really was nowhere for many of them, most of them, to go at all. So again, this is a whole new resource and hope for all of us. Inside of the building that we have on property, we do have a marine animal hospital or surgical and treatment area, and we can do everything from wound repairs to if we need to remove an eye or part of a bone or something of that nature. So these animals are really getting advanced level care, just like a lot of our other wildlife get, from deer to bunnies to squirrels. They all get this at other wildlife facilities, but this is new for marine mammals in our region. This is a harbor seal pup that came in with a fracture on his bone, that's his left flipper there, left rear flipper in the x-ray. And we're able to repair that. It was infected, we cleared up the infection, and this animal was able to return to his wild population and be part of that whole process. So it was really cool. We did partner with some other local veterinarians that typically work with cats and dogs. They came in with their students, so this was an incredible learning opportunity for a lot of folks as well. We get a lot of phone calls, which is great. Sometimes it's just a harbor seal pup taking a nap, and we get the opportunity to educate our community members and our neighbors that that's totally normal, no problem. Or it's a sea lion waving his flipper around, and he's just having a good day. But a lot of times these animals are in trouble, and it can be distressing for community members when they're not able to reach someone and get someone to help that animal. So we really take a lot of pride in the fact that we answer our phones, and we're there to be able to help. And help people understand these animals too. We've had 95 patients come through the hospital. We've responded to many, many more in the field. Some animals, like whales, are too big to come in, of course, so we do what we can out in the wild. We're also there for threatened and endangered species, which of course is really important because these animals, every single one of them counts for their population to maintain its numbers. Also means we're prepared in the event of a crisis like an oil spill. We have lots and lots of volunteers. I love this. This is a community organization. Over almost to 10,000 hours just in the past couple of seasons. And this is really the only place in the Pacific Northwest that volunteers can get hands-on experience with marine mammals, which is pretty unique. We also have internships, and that's really cool. We take about 12 interns over the summer time period in 2 different sets. And this helps them gain skills and knowledge that's really going to give them a leg up in the marine mammal workforce out in the world, which is quite competitive. I also wanted to mention that our home base, SR3's home base, is right here in the marina, but we also do this southern resident killer whale health research. And I think that's another point of pride for the community to know that the organization that really does a vast majority of this kind of health assessment research with these endangered animals is right here in your own backyard. It's pretty cool. It is all drone-based, non-invasive research. We're able to assess their health, look at behaviors, look at skin condition, and all of this data the government on both the US side and the Canadian side rely on to make decisions about conservation policies for these animals. So you might have seen in the news about distance boats have to stay away, or ones that are pregnant, ones that are ailing. All of that is coming from a lot of the research that we're doing. So we really are very proud to be able to have this actionable science that they need. We do this with other species as well. I just wanted to mention that, both far and wide in Antarctica with different types of killer whales, gray whales when they come through the Puget Sound, harbor seals, humpback whales. So lots of different species that we work with, not just the southern residents. And we know there's been a lot of talk of what's going on in there. We put up this beautiful artwork that the city also helped us do. I love it. But of course, it blocks people's view and they're curious what's going on. Well, these little critters are also curious about what's going on outside. So for everyone's safety and for the ability for them to be able to go back to the wild, we have to keep them protected from people. I think it's important that everyone understands we're not an animal shelter. These are wild animals. We want them to go back to the wild. And unfortunately, they do get used to people. If they get too used to people and we release them, they go right up to people when they're out in the wild, and we don't want them to do that. So that's really why we're closed. It's not because we just don't want to see people or don't want to let the community in. It is part of our federal permitting process. We did host our very first community open house. I was super excited about this. We were able to do this because we did not have animals on site at the time, and we welcomed about 230 people in about 4 hours. We were blessed with some beautiful weather that day, thank goodness, and everybody was super excited to get to see behind the scenes of how we do what we do. It was incredibly engaging. Lots of future conservationists came to see us, AKA kids. So we had a really good time welcoming the community. We certainly hope to do this in the future, but of course that does depend on if we have animals in a hospital at the time or not. We do partner with the community in many different ways. You guys might remember CPUP Patrol we did a couple years in a row with the police department. We're doing International Coastal Cleanup Day every year right in the marina. In partnership with several different groups that are local. We've had birding groups come through, walking groups come through that walk in the marina. We've had Girl Scout groups be able to come through and learn and help us with beach cleanups. So we really want to be part of this community. So I hope that if you know groups or others that are interested in us, that you'll help them connect with us because this is really important to us. We are also starting a new collaborative program with the Mass Center this summer where we'll be doing on-beach education programming with them. So we're very excited about that too. And there's lots of local businesses we partner with. Way too many to put everybody up here, but just wanted to call out a few. Some of you likely know about some of these partnerships, as I mentioned with the Mass Aquarium, but also the Maritime High School. Their students coming through really trying to boost those maritime jobs out there. Why Not You Academy. We've done some presentations virtually with the library as well. So really trying to get people as engaged as we possibly can while understanding that we have some limitations of people coming into the facility. SR3 does bring people that otherwise may not visit Des Moines into the area, donors that come through for tours and things like that. We really work hard to encourage them to visit our local businesses, experience the area. Some of our local businesses have partnered to give our volunteers that drive sometimes a couple of hours to volunteer with us discounts when they're here to buy lunch and coffee and things like that. So we work hard to be part of the community and reciprocal because you guys have certainly supported us in ways we did not expect, so we're very happy. As far as where we want to go in the future, these images are for some facilities down in California. They are rather large facilities, but I just wanted to show a few examples of what could be possible in the future to allow us to open up to the public. The animals you can't go right up to the fence and be nose to nose with them like you could in an aquarium, but there are some opportunities for being able to see things from a distance through windows or through one-way mirrors or one-way windows, things of that nature that we really want to explore once we have a little more space, if that's a possibility in the future. I do think that that would open up some additional learning opportunities for bringing larger groups through. Also just having more students from local colleges and community colleges be able to gain the experience they need for careers in this kind of a field. SR3 is really unique, and I think it's the only of its kind around, I know that. And I think it's gonna bring some unique opportunities to the city as we figure out how we can grow together and become part of this. I'm doing okay on time? Okay, somebody stop me. The health and safety of our patients definitely comes first, but rehabilitation is really an opportunity to educate. That's why we do what we do. We're not trying to save every single animal that's injured and sick out there. We're trying to show people how we as humans impact the ocean animals and what we can do to prevent it and make things better for all of us. So, in closing, I would like to ask the City Council and our community members to think about how SR3 could become more a part of this community, and as the city changes, what could that look like? Where do we fit into the bigger picture of things? And hopefully, again, this is a point of pride for everyone that you've made such huge strides for marine animals, and you're doing a big part of ocean conservation. So thank you, everyone, for giving me the time to talk tonight. Please contact me. You can also call the facility, the main number's online, and reach me anytime with questions.
Turn it over to City Manager first.
Yeah, Casey, thank you very much. Just a couple of comments. What you're doing, I think, is one aspect of the city truly acting on our concern to be good stewards of the relationship between the land side and Puget Sound, and to be environmentally conscious and to take advantage of opportunities. One thing you said that's interesting for us has always been that this is the only facility of its type in the Northwest. And so then that starts to raise issues about how we did the permitting, what was the infrastructure, what were those arrangements. I remember the amount of time we took working through all of those. And I can't thank Scott enough. You and the Marina staff did a great job on that. Our permitting folks did a great job coming up with ways to allow you to do what you needed to do, you know. And we completely appreciate that you're here. We're excited. It's a great partnership. And as far as we're concerned, you know, the city put an investment of time and energy and resources into making that possible. And you've completely capitalized on that and done a great job. So we're so pleased to have you here.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I would add that I'd like to thank the city manager who saw the vision from a rainy night at Annie Irene's that you and I had some time ago. It's so wonderful that to see something that we think could be and what it can be, just starting out with an idea. But when I introduced you to Michael, you guys work very closely together, and we love having you as our neighbor. My question before I go to the rest of the council is, can you talk about the ways the residents can donate? I know you always need money and the ways to donate, and volunteership, but typically a volunteership's a little bit more involved than just, oh, I can show up randomly and help out. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. As you mentioned, this is not a cheap endeavor. These animals are larger. They require lots of different medications and specialty knowledge and expertise to take care of them. So of course, monetary donations are always greatly appreciated. There's other ways to donate. Your time, as Matt mentioned, it does take a little bit of training and skill, and we're willing and able to provide all of that. So it just requires a little bit of dedication of time if you're interested in that animal care side of things. There's also, if you have a specialty skill, you're a really good construction or electrician or administration, all of those types of skills are greatly appreciated and have a little bit more flexibility depending on the project as well. The other thing you can do is just tell your friends and neighbors and people that you interact with about us, follow us on social media and share our information. We have only been in Des Moines for 2 years. We've been around a lot longer, but COVID didn't really help with us getting the word out during those few years when we made our home here. So we're really getting back out into the community and telling people who we are and what we do, and that we're here as a resource.
Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thanks, Casey. I love this place. I am so excited that you're here with us and doing this work. I know that the Highline School District has a big festival every year and invites all the sixth graders to a big event called Storm Fest.
Yeah, we did that one year.
Okay, so I didn't know if you guys participated, but you would be such a great addition to that, and obviously you know about it, so.
We are. I'm not sure if it's already happened this year or not, but we do have a community engagement coordinator, so we try and keep our pulse on all of those things, but certainly my email's there. If there's something you know of you think we would make a great addition to, please let us know, because sometimes things slip through the cracks and we miss something.
Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
One more question. It's more of an explanation. So one of the big drivers with our drone show that we're gonna do on the 4th of July was a comment that you made to me about what it does to the sea life. Could you talk a little bit about that to educate our public?
I think I exactly said you scared the crap out of my animals. It did.
I think it was a little more coarse than that, but yeah.
Okay. I'm on record, so. Yes, so it does, obviously out in the wild, you guys have probably seen, there's seals right off our shoreline, and they're gonna hear it, but they have a way to escape from it. When they're in our facility, there's nowhere for them to really go. They don't have a space to hide. It's really like directly right over us. So it does scare them. While it doesn't do anything, permanently damaging these animals, as far as we know, right then, it could for some species that are incredibly delicate, such as a small dolphin or porpoise, or an animal that is in much more critical condition. That could be detrimental or maybe even deadly. So I made that comment in hopes that maybe there was an alternative or something else we could do. And that's when drones were mentioned. So I'm extremely thankful that the city is willing to try this and see how it goes. I think that the community, I hope you appreciate that you've got some really visionary people on the city council here. They mentioned, Michael saw the vision when I talked to him about this. I talked to lots of cities that couldn't wrap their mind around this, and city permitting people that couldn't understand what we were trying to do, even though this is done throughout the country. So I am extremely grateful for the support we've received here.
Casey, let me mention looking at some of the designs for the drones, we're trying to figure out how they could do an orca.
Yeah, that'd be great. I love the idea of shapes. That'd be really fun. So.
Any other council members before we go on to the next subject? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're an awesome neighbor, and we're glad you're here.
Thank you, Casey. Moving on, we've got on the agenda, you'll see South King County Community Impact Fund update. The person needed to do that had a serious conflict, so we're going to postpone that to another night. And now I'd like to move to discussion about the storefront restoration project in Rochelle. And by way of introducing Rochelle, I want to say that, there are occasions where a great action leads to the possibility of better outcomes. And so there's really no way to acknowledge for the value that in the middle of the night that we had the vandalism downtown where windows were broken into the business community, Councilmember Nutting got out of a warm bed and went downtown in the middle of the night and started boarding up windows. And from that came the idea of establishing some type of business support program for events like that. And so portions of that were remanded, I think, to economic development. But also, we once we heard the idea and it looked like council was going to be supportive, we went forward, and Rochelle's done a great job. I just wanted to introduce her. She's going to show you a PowerPoint of where we are at this point, and then a motion to proceed, and then we will come back with other aspects of this to economic development. So, Rochelle, thank you for your work on this.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, City Manager Matthias. First I'll say it's very hard to follow sea life, but I'll give it, they're so cute. Okay, so this is the City of Des Moines Downtown Storefront Restoration Project proposal. Before I get started, I'll give you a little bit of background. On April 13th, an individual vandalized over a dozen businesses in our downtown core, causing an upwards of $45,000 in damages. This specific incident led to damaged storefronts, broken windows, damage we all heard about. This constrained normal business operation and inflicted costly repairs to be made. This event occurred as our local businesses are attempting to recover from the COVID pandemic. Last week at the May 4th City Council meeting, Councilmember Nutting proposed creating a grant program that would assist impacted businesses and property owners were also affected with the needed repairs. This proposal was supported by other council members at that meeting. The following program was drafted and reflects the city's ongoing commitment not only to the safety of our community but also to businesses who have been impacted by this criminal activity. To give a little bit more background, I was really excited when this proposal came forth because it really is consistent with other programs that the city has done to consistently help our local businesses. So to note a few, the GROW program, the Grant Relief Opportunity, provided $500,000 of funding to many of our local small businesses, in addition to $500,000 provided to support local business with the use of the ARPA funds. Also, there was the very popular EATS program that generated significant economic support during COVID, benefited our seniors and veterans. And then finally, thank you to council for bringing this forth. It's an opportunity again for us as a city to renew our support for the local businesses and to remain operational and thrive, which is what we all want. With that, the City of Des Moines is proud to introduce the Downtown Storefront Restoration Project. This is phase 1 of what may become an expanded citywide program. $25,000 of American Rescue Plan Act funds, otherwise known as ARPA, will be allocated for this program. Each award applicant can receive up to $1,000 to repair and restore damage. This includes really anything to repair, but it's existing repairs still needed or deductibles for business owners or homeowners who have already paid. These efforts and improvement will enhance our community as a safe and welcoming place to shop, work, live, and invest in. So criteria for the funding. Our proposal is that they have a permanent physical storefront location or a multifamily resident within the downtown core. And we'll show you a map shortly so you have a visual. But it would be along the Marine View Drive to include 216th to 227th, sorry. Have an active Des Moines business license. Of course, this excludes the multifamily residents. Have experienced damage which occurred due to the vandalism in 2023. This proposed facility improvements must be made within 60 days of acceptance unless a time extension is approved. And then finally, for criteria, we need applicants to be able to provide required documentation related to the repairs or reimbursement requests, so receipts or some sort of documentation. Here's the map, so you have a general idea. And this is this first phase of the program. Okay, so process. Applications will be available on the City of Des Moines website beginning May 25th. Applicants would provide their name, address, the targeted improvement site, just basic information, and then demonstrate the need for the project. We would just want to understand the objectives, the expected results, describe the activities to be funded, and who will perform them. The applicants must also provide proof of a current City of Des Moines business license. Again, this excludes residential or multifamily homes. And then the applications will be reviewed upon receipt, and funds will be distributed directly to the businesses or property owners, subject to availability. And then finally, we anticipate payments to impacted businesses and multifamily homes to be processed timely. We like to move quickly with common sense things around here. Improvements to the projects will move forward quickly to reimburse for out-of-pocket expenses that have already been made. And finally, this is the motion before you.
Councilmember Nutting.
I move to direct the city manager to allocate $25,000 of unspent ARPA funds to implement the downtown storefront restoration project.
Second.
And I have a second from Councilmember Pennington. Any questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Rochelle. So a couple questions. This program will be staff administered, or do you have a contract administrator?
Yes, it would be administered by staff.
Okay. And is it wasn't clear, is this single incident related or any incident similar to during the entire year of 2022 or 2023? This is 2023 related?
23, yes, within that vicinity area.
And then just a certain time frame. So if, for example, if something were to happen tonight, would a business be able to apply for this?
If it's within the area that we outlined and then they match the other criteria, I would believe so, yes.
So is it, once the 25,000, if the $25,000 gets spent by July or August, and then an event happens, it's just a certain amount of money that we're allocating to this project, and that's,
At this time, that's
At
my
this time.
understanding, but
Okay.
the hope is that this be phase one and based on future funding availability.
okay, and that segued to my last question is is there a view toward continuing a similar ongoing program either through with leftover ARPA funds or through Human Services?
I'm
Do we have
going
a
to
view
defer
toward
that to City Manager Mathias.
Yeah, Councilman, or Deputy Mayor, appreciate your comments. Try not to jump ahead of ourselves too much with this. But this is phase one, $25,000. If there's demand, which we have the police chief here, so I'm assuming there won't be. But if there's demand for any of these types of things, which in this instance was a very difficult situation because I think that there was possibly mental health condition associated with the event. Very difficult. But we absolutely want to support our businesses. And so if there's a way to expand the financial capacity of this program, expand the geographic capacity, keep an ongoing basis, because, you know, as Rochelle's correct, it starts January 1st, 2023, and goes as into the future to the degree there's resources, at which time we'd come back to council, literally replenish the bank and go from there.
Councilmember Nutting, then you, Councilmember Harris, will go afterwards.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and I know it's not all-encompassing. I'm grateful that it encompasses the businesses that it does. It's a great first step, and I'm very appreciative for the program. So, and if there is more desire for it above the 25,000, I look forward to hearing that at council for further approval. So, thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. So what is the thinking behind limiting it to the downtown area? Please.
I think the idea of limiting it was primarily where this event occurred, in the downtown. And the second thing was that I think the way we'd like to proceed with this is to see how effective we can be in a defined area, and then from that, learn whatever lessons we need to know and move it and expand its availability.
Sure. Okay, so my second, I thought what we voted on last week was to remand this to the Economic Committee.
The actual...
Speed is great, but...
Well, actually, what was remanded was a comment you made about should we include security cameras and so forth. That was remanded to the Economic Development Committee and will be considered there. But this was an immediate response to a situation that was supported by the council at that time.
Thank you.
I have a question. I went around and spoke to many of the business owners immediately after this and had good discussion, and they were, and follow-ups, and they were very supportive of this. In one particular instance, though, a gentleman owns two businesses in the location. Both were affected on different nights. Would he qualify as two locations, or is it only under the one business or business license?
It would be if they had business licenses for each of those businesses.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Councilmember Pennington, then back to you, Councilmember Harris.
Well, I just want to say, I think this is a good idea, and thank you, Councilmember Nutting, for having the vision to bring that up. And I think it really speaks to the commitment that the city has to the local businesses and folks to really help them be successful. You know, we did this through COVID. with the different programs, and I think this is just one more thing to help out. And, you know, with SR3, the city did a tremendous amount of work, a lot of preparation, a lot of things that probably would have impeded them from taking in that spot. So I think this is just one more thing, and so thank you for that. Thank you for the work you did.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. Do we have a number as to how many of these eligible incidents have occurred during the eligible time period?
I do not have that information.
Thank you.
But we do have the police reports from that evening.
Okay, so essentially, I mean, you know, this is meant to respond to that particular, you know, evening's events, rather than being a general purpose.
I can answer that. Part of it is, actually, a couple businesses were affected about a week prior. And the idea is that there may have been other cases where windows were broke out subsequently before that or May after. But, and also, I think it was 16 businesses and residences, I think was the number in that one particular incident. But between them, there's definitely a majority already there that would qualify for this, should they choose to do so.
Mayor, may I just add one thing? If you watch the news at night, unfortunately, you see over and over and over examples of vandalism, especially in Seattle. And as they interview the business owners, one of the key characteristics that they communicate is this feeling of being alone without support, without police support, without the things they need to continue their livelihood. And so I think this is not only directly effective for the businesses, but shows them that they're not alone. And the city's there, and we're going to step in, and we're going to try and help them. And I think that's a critical component of this.
Well, if I may, I would suggest that other businesses outside this boundary will feel slighted. And so I would strongly suggest that this be amended to allow at least the opportunity to any business that has been hit during this window. No pun intended. Because, it feels like a slight to businesses that matter to the city and are outside this geography. That's just my feeling on it. Thank you.
Are you making a motion?
Well, yes, I would amend this to apply to all of 918, 91918, and 91848, the entire geography. Anybody with a UBI in Des Moines that meets the criteria should be eligible for this. Yes, absolutely.
Councilmember, in that case, what we'll do is we'll put this on hold until we can identify the staffing requirements, the administrative requirements, the financial requirements, bring that back probably in the next month or so. Council can take action. Now we're into the summer and nothing's happening. So this is, this is designated as a first step toward covering the entire city, which was in the presentation that Rochelle gave. And we can accommodate any direction from the council you want, but this is something we can do tomorrow. What you're suggesting is something we can do in maybe 8 weeks if council is supportive.
I don't see how you put up a web page that says, you know, here, apply here within this time frame, and I don't see how that adds any added staff time or whatever. They hand you the documentation, it looks legit, you write them a check, done.
Who do they hand the documentation to?
Who would they hand the same documentation to within the current boundary?
Because there's a defined population that we will serve, then we can allocate for that. Beyond that, it starts to get more complicated. I've constantly shared that with the council.
How does it get more complicated? They have a business license, they have a physical footprint. How does that in any way increase the complexity of this?
Councilmember Harris, go ahead and make your amended motion.
I believe I have. I would amend this to include the entire city of Des Moines.
Okay, that's what you hadn't done, in any way, clarification. Are you, I'm going to turn the floor over to Councilmember Oxker once you're done.
I'll second the motion.
You're seconding the motion?
And and just point out that there's 25, it doesn't matter where it is in the city, there's only 25 instances, so it shouldn't involve any additional staff time. It's still 25.
All right, so let's vote on the motion as amended. Councilmember, our Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Just, I guess one other consideration is, if you opened that up to the entire city and a bunch of businesses took advantage of it that were not in the original parameters, and if this was originally designed to be kind of a collective response to a very focused incident as kind of like a pilot program, I would also be a little concerned that possibly some of the businesses that were affected by the original incident might not. If they didn't get an application in time, then they wouldn't get the money would be gone. But I don't know what the numbers are. So I think I would want to protect the original idea, almost like this is a pilot program. So I'm not sure what the numbers are.
Yes,
When-
City Manager Mathias.
Yeah, I think that the characterization of this as simple is hopeful, but when somebody submits an application, we will then document what they provide as proof that events occurred. We'll probably look at police reports. We will probably look at, what's the basis of the claim. That requires review. That's being responsible custodians of the public trust. So there's more to it apparent, than it may appear. We think this is an amount that we can effectively utilize and see what the demand is, and hopefully be in a position to expand this, but also learn lessons as to where the time is required, what the documentation is, what's acceptable documentation, what happens if they're operating, they don't have a business license, because we like to help them get what they need and also be able to function and also be able to overcome any vandalism. So there's multiple steps in this, I want to point out. I appreciate your comment about pilot. That was the goal.
Councilmember Pennington.
Yeah, and I agree with Deputy Mayor Buxton. This was, the initial thing was a pilot to see if this works. The other thing is the motion says that any business in the city of Des Moines that has a business license, well, you've got home businesses, are they included? What are the limitations to that? And it seems pretty broad spectrum. I'm not opposed to growing it at some point, but I think this amendment is too broad-based for me to support.
Councilmember Pennington, I couldn't agree with you more. I also, after speaking to a lot of these businesses, a lot of them either pay the deductible or out of pocket in far excess of the $1,000 we're talking about, and they definitely need the money now. So I'd love to go with this forward and then expand it later, as the original motion was. Councilmember Harris, your last time.
Thank you. It would be good if we had a notion of the businesses that have lost that four-figure window. I have written that kind of check, and it seems to me just that it should not be that difficult to find out which storefront businesses have had a break-in of that magnitude within the hate to use it again, but window of opportunity, and that's just, it's the only fair thing to do. If we say we support all of our business community, that's what we should do. It seems a bit, nobody's more sympathetic to the 15, 16 businesses that got taken off, but there are other businesses in town that also get robbed, and yeah.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Harris. Let's take a vote on the amended motion first, and then we'll go to the original motion afterwards. So all those in favor is amended by Councilmember Harris, raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Harris. I see Councilmember Oxiger. All those opposed, I see Councilmember Pennington. Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. That motion fails 2-4. All those in favor of the motion as originally intended, please raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Nutting, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Oxiger, and myself. The motion passes 6-0. You have the floor again.
Thank you. What I'd like to do now, Rochelle, thank you very much. You're doing a great job in a very short period of time. Appreciate that. I'd like to move on and have Shannon Kirchberg, our Director of Emergency Preparedness. Is that it? In management? And Shannon's going to just relate some training class update for the council.
Thank you, City Manager Mathias. Good evening, Council. My name is Shannon Kirchberg. I am the Director of Emergency Management and Workplace Safety. I'm here to give you an update on some training that we did for our Emergency Operations Center. Just a little background, our Emergency Operations Center location and staffing. Our planning stages began prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. We worked in partnership with our leadership group and South King Fire and Rescue. We identified a location and worked on setting up our staffing and our technology planning, and all of that began in late 2019. The COVID-19 pandemic expedited our city's need for our Emergency Operations Center. The pandemic shortened our timeline for our planning and put an urgency on our need to input technology and staff so that we could communicate with our emergency responders and our city residents. We were able to set up incomplete our Emergency Operations Center at Fire Station 67, and we were able to activate it and staff it starting April 2nd of 2020. Due to COVID-19, all in-person training classes were canceled. However, with the current stabilization of the virus, in-person trainings have been rescheduled, and we have started training our city staff in Emergency Operations Center operations. We brought in a consultant to run an intermediate Emergency Operations Center function, G2300. It's important to note that there were 4 prerequisite online training classes that all of the people that attended this class had to take prior to attending the in-person class. The G2300 course explains the Emergency Operations Center critical link to incident command and the coordination structure in emergency response. It helps us identify staffing solutions by aligning current job skill sets in staff's current everyday job duties to the needs in our Emergency Operations Center structure. It explains the planning, operational, and research functions of the Emergency Operations Center and how it is there to support incident command. The Emergency Operations Center does not take control of an incident. We are there to support the emergency response. This training uses a discussion-based scenario that the class worked on in teams. The class identified essential elements of information, also referred to as EEIs, that would be needed to support decision-making and planning by the policy group that is led by our city manager. Changes in the Emergency Operations Center activation levels, staffing, resources, and information required for an expanding incident. It also discussed the role of an Emergency Operations Center during the transition out of response and into recovery. The scenario that we used was a train derailment that took place next to a county fair. As the days went on, we added a car fire on the interstate. That car burst into flames. Then it caught a building on fire in a populated neighborhood. So we took a bad day and turned it into the worst day ever. They did great. Course participants included City of Des Moines and City of Burien emergency operations staff. We were extended 30 people to be in the class. So due to the numbers that we had between the city of Des Moines and the city of Burien, we were able to open the class up to a few community partners that needed this class as a prerequisite to get into future training classes. So we had Highline College, we had an individual from Joint Base Lewis McChord, as well as someone from the city of Tacoma. There were a total of 27 participants in the class, and class took place from Tuesday, May 2nd through Thursday, May 4th. Next steps, our emergency operation team will continue to meet each quarter at the Emergency Operations Center. We are going to review and distribute individuals' position task books so that they continue with their training. We're going to look at additional training needs of the team and what they want to build in their skill set. We are going to schedule position-specific training with the city of Burien that'll take place this fall. And then we will conduct a full tabletop exercise to put all of their new skills to test. I wanted to extend a special thanks to Wesley Homes. They hosted our meeting for the 3 days. The Washington State Emergency Management Division for loading the class onto the website and letting everybody to be pre-qualified through their technology. Also, SK Miller Consultants, Sarah Miller, and Lenora Bouchard for coming and instructing the class for us. One last note, because I have the microphone, I know that everybody knows that this weekend the weather is going to warm up. Out of respect for our first responders, I want to remind everybody that the air may be hot, but the water is extremely cold. So please take cautions while cooling off. And take note that that water is really cold, and stay out of the water. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shannon. Shannon, you do a great job of taking a complicated subject and making it simple. But no, Shannon has done just such a great job of transitioning from the response to COVID to preparation and training for the future. So bringing everybody up to date, because the level of knowledge of emergency management at this point, I think is higher than it's ever been among government, and probably private sector as well. So really appreciate your efforts. And Mayor, if you have any questions.
42 degrees is what the sound is right now, just so you know. I'm personally intimate with it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Shannon. Moving on, I'd like to, last but not least, is our legislative update from our legislative advocate, Anthony Hempstead. And, you know, every time the end of session comes, we are grateful to Anthony for his incredible efforts and work on behalf of this community, and for an ongoing ability to direct resources with the support of our legislative delegation to the city of Des Moines. And that's bringing millions and millions of dollars into the city for especially public works type projects, capital improvements, transportation, Barnes Creek Trail, for example, and other things. So Anthony, we look forward to your update, but we also appreciate your efforts so much. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Mayor Mahoney, councilors, staff, citizens, tonight we'll quickly go through what happened in the session and focus especially on our issues for Des Moines and the Des Moines priorities. In that this session, there about 2,000 bills were introduced. About 700 were passed. And so there are lots and lots of different issues. And if you have questions on some of those individually, we can talk about them briefly, but there's lots of issues that we could spend a whole study session on. And so if we want to get into great detail on other things, we can do that at future study sessions. There's also going to be a AWC recap on city issues on May 18th. AWC does a great job, and we work closely with them on many things as well. But this session, as Charles Dickens might say, is the best of times and the worst of times for cities. For Des Moines, we had some really good wins. For cities as a whole, there was a considerable assertion of city power that was taken by the state, and that will have a real impact on Des Moines going forward, as it will with almost every city in the state as well. So we just jump to the overview of this session. It was a long session, 105 days. Just finished a couple weeks ago. And of course, it was the first year of a biennial budget, and so a lot of focus was on the budgets and money and what's going to be happening. Des Moines did have 3 significant capital budget requests. Well, I take that back. 2 in the capital budget, 1 in the transportation budget, but we had 3 big budget requests. The capital budget was looking quite robust when we spoke after the Economic and Revenue Forecast Council's budget outlook in November. However, a couple things happened that really ate into what was available in the capital budget, in that there was a major expansion of housing programs into approximately $1 billion went into housing from the capital budget. That much bigger than has ever happened in the past. Also, the Public Works Trust Fund was expanded to its biggest amount ever, which is great, but money was moved from individual city and local government projects to the Public Works Trust Fund, where we can compete for that. So we should definitely compete for that, but it took away money that could be earmarked. Also, Western State Hospital has needed attention for years, maybe decades, and about $700 million out of the capital budget went into Western State this year. So those 3 items knocked out close to $2 billion out of the capital budget. And so individual districts had a much shallower pool than we had anticipated in November. That being said, it still went fine, but yes, that's the capital and transportation budget. On this past session was really known as the housing session, and more housing bills were passed this year than many years in the past combined. Also is very active on public safety issues. And legislation in general, a lot of bills got passed, more than a usual session would happen. And this is partly because of the continuing shift in who's in the legislature. Democrats added to their majorities just one house in both one seat in both the House and the Senate in the last elections, but also the makeup within the caucus changed very considerably, and there were fewer moderates, and so there was less of a brake or throttle on some issues than there might have been in past years, even with significant majorities. And so a lot of bills that have been talked about but not passed in the past actually passed this year. So while many things did happen, there were some surprises. The Blake bill, or the Blake issue on determining what drugs are legal and illegal, and on the possession and use for those drugs. That was one of the must-pass pieces of legislation that was out there for this session, as the Supreme Court had nullified our existing laws about a year and a half ago. Legislature put in a short-term fix that expires on July 1st. The legislature had to put in a long-term fix this session, And that came up on the last day of session, on April 23rd, fairly late in the day, for a vote in the House. And something happened that has only happened 4 times in the last 20 years. A bill coming to the floor, brought in by the Speaker, failed by 12 votes. It was, that doesn't happen. And clearly more, especially when one party has almost a supermajority. There wasn't enough negotiation that took place, and because this is such an issue, such a crucial issue, and on July 1st, it means that most drugs will become legal for possession or use, including fentanyl and meth and heroin. Many local governments are already starting to adopt their own ordinances, as we have talked about doing in Des Moines if we need to. But the governor has called a special session that will start May 16th to address that issue. I've been in touch with staff, including our judge, Lisa Leone, on this issue, and we've been talking very closely during the session and since the session on how, as a city, we should be responding to be ready for whatever happens with Blake. I talked with Representative Christine Reeves and several members of leadership this past weekend also on what they're seeing is likely to be happening with a special session and moving forward. And all that being said, I don't know. And I don't think the legislative leadership doesn't know, Governor Inslee doesn't know. Definitely things have not been agreed. So a lot can happen between now and the 16th. Negotiations are taking place. There is hope that it is a quick session, but the special session could go for 30 days. The only one item on the agenda for the special session is Blake. Though the legislature can, if it chooses, expand that agenda. Currently, from what we are hearing, there are no plans to expand that beyond Blake, though. Okay, for Des Moines itself, we had several legislative priority areas that we agreed in November. Those included Blake, and so Blake that grade is incomplete. Very much a TBD on what's going to be happening there. Also, we were looking to have a more reasonable pursuit bill after the what may have been overreach on restraining when police could pursue individuals. And a bill has passed. It remained controversial, and there is a lot of negotiations on that, but it is a step forward. And the reasonable suspicion standard has been reinstated for certain dangerous crimes. Many crimes weren't included in that, including car theft, though. And so there is likely to be new legislation introduced next session. Both of these issues will continue to be discussed going forward. Also, airport issues were on our legislative priority list, and trying to keep momentum regarding the placement of the second airport. In that the CACC was expected to name a location and move forward this summer. That has changed radically, and after lots of activity on that issue this session. I think we've ended up about as good as we could have, considering what the situation was. But the CACC has been disbanded, but a new group will be appointed by the governor in the coming months, and it will carry on the effort of finding more capacity, and that capacity will not be including SeaTac Airport. But we would have liked the bill to be more aggressive in its timelines. And this will be something that it will be important for us to continue to bird dog and try to make sure that there is progress, because as it is set up, it seems the default will be that this could take years to get progress, and so there will have to be pressure for there to be real progress. Significant progress did take place on other airport-related issues, though. The Sustainable Aircraft Fuel Incentive Bill was passed. This will make Washington State, it will basically put Washington State on par with California as being the best place in the country to make SAF investments. And these are big investments. The plants are in $1 billion and up for constructing these, and there are 3 or 4 that are looking to go into the state. And if we're producing SAF in Washington State, it's much more likely that SeaTac is going to be using that SAF, and that should be reducing the ultrafine particles and pollutants that our community has to deal with. So that's a big win with SAF. Also included in that bill, there's a ongoing wazoo monitoring of ultrafine particle output from SeaTac. So that's, again, I think a big step forward for the health of our community, and just monitoring, figuring out what's actually here will make a significant difference, we think, in the long term. Also, there was money for an asthma and airport air quality intervention project that will be studying asthma in this area and other communities within 10 miles of SeaTac Airport. Also on our priority list were some auto-related issues. Catalytic converter theft. Mayor Mahoney and I served on the work group during the interim, came up with a variety of recommendations for continuing to put more teeth in the catalytic converter theft bill or laws. As that recommendation only came in right before session started, speaking with Representative Ryu, who was the prime sponsor of the bill last year, she was saying, with everything else going on, we're going to look to do this at the next session, so in 2024. That being said, very late in the session, a group of Republican senators introduced a catalytic converter bill, quite different than the recommendations that our work group came up with, but it did move considerably through the Senate. So that will be in the discussion next. It didn't move out of the Senate, but it did move several steps. So it remains controversial with the recycling groups and junkyard groups. So there's still more negotiation needs to take place, but that will be queued up for something in 2024. Also, something that the council added to our priority list in November was looking at banning aftermarket mufflers in a similar situation, we talked with leadership on public safety committees, and they're saying with the traffic jam that they were having this session and the likely controversy that we're going to have to work out, said let's work on it this interim and look at trying to introduce something for 2024 session. The previous session, we were very active on street racing bills and got some things passed, which will be helping with Redondo and the traffic cameras down there. There was another street racing bill that Mary Mahoney and I were very active on that did pass. It will include drifting within the definition of street racing, will include parking lots. We've had issues in parking lots here in Des Moines with this, and it allows the seizure of cars that take place in street racing. But that's passed. It was signed by the governor just a few days ago. So, dollars and cents. We had three requests on the transportation budget on Barnes Creek Trail, $3.5 million that was allocated in the last session, along with every other non-motorized project. There was no date set with that. And so this session we were going in and fighting with every other project to get funding now rather than 16 years from now, because it's a 16-year funding package. Happily, we're funded now, so that can move forward as of July 1st. And this $3.5 million, that was the last piece of the puzzle that Andrew and your Public Works Department need for building Barnes Creek Trail South. Similarly, with the Redondo Fishing Pier, we were still $1 million short for construction funds to rebuild that. Also, we've been waiting to get federal permits. Andrew succeeded in getting the federal permits, and we did get another $1 million so that project can proceed. There was a nice to have. Ideally, we would have loved another $1.6 million for a bathroom project adjacent to the fishing pier, but with how tight the capital budget was, we're happy to get $1 million and move forward. Similarly, on the Marina Steps, we're looking for $2 million to help move that forward on construction of Marina Steps, planning construction. And we did receive $1 million. Again, with how tight the capital budget was, I see $1 million as a huge win. So, looking forward, as mentioned, a special session coming up next week. We'll see if that goes one day or if it goes 30. And we don't expect more special sessions after that, and so the next regular session would be next January, and that will be a short session of 60 days. Will be the second year of a biennial budget. So we can come back with budget asks, although it's much tougher to get money in the second year than it is the first year of a biennial budget. Again, it's early, but I would expect housing and public safety will again be the hot issues in the 24 session. And it might be like public safety happened here a few years ago when big changes were put in, and then this year we've been trying to ease back some of those changes because the changes were too big. Perhaps with housing, we might see that too, because again, generally, just briefly, two big housing changes, and there are many, many different housing changes, but the missing middle basically takes out single-family zoning, and so now every single-family lot can have at least 2 units, and in many cases, 4 units for a city the size of Des Moines. Also with accessory dwelling units, most lots of any size in the state can now take up to 2 ADUs. And that's a huge assertion of city authority by the state. And these have been talked about for years and years and years, but this year they passed. So we'll see if there's going to be kind of a backlash on that, where people will say, hey, this is great. But for planners, and as we're working on comp plans and density, you know, these were just a couple grenades that were thrown in. And it will change a lot of things going forward. Also, coming up, obviously, it's an election year in '24. So far, we have an open governor's seat, attorney general seat, commissioner of public land seat, and insurance commissioner seat. And that's only right now. There could be more coming up as musical chairs start to play out. But certainly, we should be already thinking about what we want to be doing to expand our goals for '24 as we liaise with our legislators going forward. I think there will be some interesting prospects. There's more money than had been anticipated in the Climate Commitment Act or funds, and so maybe again with ultrafine particles and the like, because much of that is aimed, or the climate commitment is aimed at pollution and in reducing gases that may cause global warming. So those may be things we want to hone in on in the coming months. So for Des Moines, I think it was a quite successful session. Success in the legislature only comes with teamwork, and I enjoyed working with city staff, Mayor Mahoney, and different councilors on different issues. And of course, we have a fantastic legislative delegation from the 33rd and 30th. I think we have excellent relations with them. They listen to the city. We don't always agree, but good lines of communication and a real all-star team. But with that, any questions?
All right, we'll go through questions from council members. I have a few. So on the Blake decision, disaster, it's been called, and some of those things, some cities have already been very aggressive and passed laws concerning this matter. We felt it was prudent to hold off until June 1st because we assure ourselves being able to be effective should they not succeed. My question is those cities that have passed those laws, would there, probably as part of the discussion, going to be now to rescind what they tried to do, or will they have that power?
Well, it depends on how the state law is written. Very likely, the state law will be written in such a way to preempt what is being passed right now by locals. Although devil's in the details, and so we will see as this moves forward. But I do think it's prudent that as Tim and staff have done, we have something drafted, we have something ready to go, and if we need to, if it turns out on May 16th that this isn't being agreed, and if it's playing out, because it's horrendous policy if we end up on July 1st and there's no there's no state law on this, and we know that some of our neighbors probably aren't going to enact laws, and so things could be quite different if you cross Pac Ave. So it's not a way to run a state very well. Okay.
Agree.
Sorry,
Agree.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. Obviously, many of us were disappointed with this committee to cite a second airport. We really thought we were going to get it. why it's not a short-term solution, and Des Moines going to continue the burden of additional flights. How do you feel about this new committee and any results, and is there something we can do to put pressure on them? Because I'm looking at the end game, the long-term solution. Infrastructure requires probably a legitimate time frame is at least 20 to 30 years before another airport is actually in place and functional. So is there some other things we can do as a city to push? Because one of the things you mentioned is we probably gonna need some pressure here.
Yeah. We may need, and in liaising with our legislative delegation, see if it's possible to retrofit that to have a little more teeth. Because right now they have, that new group, when it's appointed, they will have to make reports, but there's not deadlines for coming to a conclusion. And we all know that reports can, annual reports are great, but you need action beyond.
Slow death by committee.
Yeah, exactly.
The aftermarket muffler one as well, which is obviously near and dear to this community, particularly our Redondo residents and most of us in town. You mentioned also that where the controversy, I'm sure it's probably gonna be some of the businesses that supply these kind of things and so forth. What other avenues or what can we do to maybe get a little more teeth in that one as well?
Yeah, and no, the auto parts dealers have very active lobbyists as well. So this one will not be a slam dunk. I believe a couple of councilors made that prediction earlier when we were discussing this, and there's going to be pushback, and we will have to have some discussions to see how we can try to finesse that one as well as possible. But it's still early days on this one.
All right. Well, as far as the public, they could write their representatives. I'm sure it's probably a good suggestion.
Yes, no, I definitely.
Okay.
It always helps to, if people hear, or if legislators hear both from electeds and members of the public, that's who they like to hear from, even more so than lobbyists.
Okay. The last question I have is concerning ADUs. I think one of the issues we have across our city is infrastructure in some of our utilities, along with some of the septic systems that are probably leaching into our sound already, et cetera. And I'm sure other cities have the same kind of issue. Is there a possibility that we can go back at them a little bit with some language about defining, because it seems like we're gonna need the infrastructure, some other things before we can ever entertain a lot of the ADU concerns or middle housing, which I think was missed in their conversation discussion. Is there some of those kind of things that maybe we can push or put on our legislative agenda, or?
Yes, and that could make a lot of sense, and I agree, we could be seeing, because these were big sweeping bills, and yes, they were cut back a bit, and many cities had issues with this. AWC had issues with this, but it was able to be passed. Again, it was a unique year. So I do suspect as issues come up with these bills, there will be an opportunity to say, well, okay, let's adjust this here and there. Not roll things back, but make adjustments.
All right, thank you. Any, Councilmember Harris?
Thank you. Regarding Blake, is it your sense that the disagreement is principled? In other words, I mean, I didn't get a read from editorials as to, is this just partisanship, or is this just something that people really have strong individual beliefs on?
I believe it's the latter, that the people have strong individual beliefs on, and it's while
Because if you have the majority and you can't count votes like that, that tells me that people are, really voting on principle.
Yeah, no,
And that's bad.
Yeah, to have a or almost a supermajority and to lose a vote,
Okay, so
on a big bill, I mean, again, it's almost unheard of.
it's a parliamentary thing, but basically, let's say this drags out until June the 2nd and they pass something then, okay? Is there some parliamentary, like we have a 30-day thing for enacting ordinances? Does that, is there any kind of window where there wouldn't be coverage?
I guess if there's an emergency clause, Tim, or something that we could do something faster than 30 days, I'm not positive.
No, I mean at the state level. I mean, if they pass something on June the 2nd,
Yes, the state can and does put emergency clauses in much of their legislation. And so as soon as it's signed by the governor, that it would take effect.
And one last thing regarding the ADUs is, are the water and sewer districts, really in this equation as well? Because, I mean, we push back, okay, but really a lot of this comes down to, can they get more money to put people on the grid? Or to, in other words, rather than trying to slow that, you could also make it easier for the various networks to make it happen.
I agree.
Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, they probably needed to be more in the middle of things than they were. I think capital budget writers will say, well, we've beefed up several of these programs, including the Public Works Trust Fund, where groups can compete for infrastructure dollars. There's a lot of money in the federal infrastructure bill as well for sewer and water. But I think as all of you know, sewer and water projects are just astronomically expensive. And so much of the capital infrastructure that's under the ground is very old and needs to be replaced.
That's my point. It just
Yeah.
seems to be slowing progress on ADUs because there's like an 8/10 block section that's still off the grid, just because it's hella expensive.
Yeah.
Somehow funding needs to be, for that 4,000 feet or whatever it is. That shouldn't hold back all of the homeowners that want to, increase density a little bit. I don't know, that's just
Anthony, if I may.
That's all I got.
Yeah, I just want to mention one thing. I think that the provision of the utility infrastructure is really a key component of how all of this plays out. And I think one of the things when Anthony, I believe very accurately, is talking about usurping local control. Some of the mechanisms through which that happens is you've also usurped the ability of local communities to establish comprehensive plans for water districts and sewer districts who also have master plans and comprehensive plans. All of that changes based on the dynamic of enforcing that these things have to be available. And that's a great concept, maybe, but the question is the actual practical implementation of all of this is just outrageous. And I appreciate you alluding to that because, at what point do you lose control? And that's what this is all about. It's about local control versus the state dictating mandates that addresses some of the political needs the state has observed without providing locals resources, unfunded mandates over and over and over. And that's especially true for the utility districts.
Right. No, agreed. Yeah, there is more money for infrastructure, but I think probably a fraction of what's actually needed because these projects are just so expensive.
All right. Seeing no more questions, I will, you have anything else?
I do.
Okay.
Anthony, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really comprehensive. Just one note, Andrew is not with us tonight. He is the assigned alternate for Mayor Mahoney at our Raya 9 Salmon District. And tonight they are taking a vote on the 2023 funding package. And Andrew, and I totally agree with this, wanted to make sure that we were in the room for that vote. So that is why we have Kai and Tommy here, and Tyler and Kai, just not Tommy, to answer any questions that might come up later. Thank you. And Mayor, that concludes our manager report.
Thank you, City Manager Mathias. Will the city clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, Puget Sound Energy easement parcel 082204-9034 Fieldhouse. Item 3, Des Moines Creek Estuary Project Engineering Service Task Assignment. Item 4, South 216th Marine View Drive Pipe Upgrade Project Engineering Services Task Assignment. Item 5, Draft Ordinance 23-0205 Obstructing a Fire Lane. Item 6, 24th Avenue South Improvement Projects, interlocal agreement with Highline Water District, and that concludes the consent calendar, Mayor.
Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve the consent calendar as read.
Second.
I have a second by Councilmember Pennington. Is there any council member that wishes to pull an item? Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. Item 3, the Des Moines Creek Estuary.
Okay. Any other council member wish to pull any other item? Seeing none, all right. We will be voting on the consent agenda of item 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0 as thought. And item 3, Councilmember Harris, you have the floor.
Thank you. I assume it's Mr. Beakley approaching the podium. So regarding task 2, it says that there are to be 3 design alternatives presented at 10%. How fleshed out is 10%? I mean, will they have pictures that, you know, a dumb guy like me could look at and go, ooh, that's what it's going to look like?
So there will be a site assessment and 3 conceptual alternatives will be proposed. 10% is only for one of those conceptual designs, but we will be able to see graphics. We will be able to see conceptual designs. And this is all in the framework of being shared with the public to seek council input, input from the public, input from other staff.
Okay, and the other thing on task 2 that caught my eye is that it does not currently include consideration of sea level rise. How come?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I would say there's not a lot of data on what projections for sea level rise is to take into account. This is the 10% level design. That may be a future consideration as we work through the project design. So it's just not a consideration at this point.
Like if you got a 30, you might be able to, you know, come up with some sort of impact, or 60% or something like that?
Correct. It's just not included at this level. We're at the conceptual level for what layouts of this could look like.
Okay. So I would like to, that's it for my questions. I mean, I have 2 amendments, but, you know, if others have questions, that's great. Otherwise, I would like to make my amendments now.
Well, let's go ahead and read the motion first, as is. Councilmember Nutting, would you like to read that?
The motion is to approve the 2022-2023 on-call general civil engineering task assignment 2022-10 with Paramatrix Inc. to provide preliminary engineering and permitting services for the Des Moines Creek Estuary Project in the amount of $249,754.28, and further authorize the city manager to sign said task assignment substantially in the form as submitted.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Pennington. All right, Councilmember Harris, what are your amendments?
My first amendment is that when we get to 10% and those 3 design alternatives are available, I would like explicitly that they may be made available to the city council and to the public. It doesn't say that directly in the packet, I don't think. So can we just get that on the record? City Manager Mathias.
Yeah, you know, Councilmember, I understand your request. I guess my only hesitation in honoring that, and certainly we bring things back, I don't think there's any secrets in anything going on at all relative to public works projects, is that I don't want to establish a legislative precedent that this is something we find in all resolutions or expenditures or any of that, that this is something that you're gonna have to trust the judgment of the staff. That's my position.
Well,
So,
well, well put. I just, the amendment stands because this is going to have, this is one of the most iconic
yeah,
places.
before you continue, and apologize, Councilmember Harris, you need a second? Not seeing one, what's your second amendment?
Okay. I would also like that there be some provision that sea level rise be explicitly included in the engineering assessment at some point in this, in their list of tasks.
Do I have a second? Seeing none. All right. Oh, a second. Okay, we have a second. All right. Continue.
That's it?
All right. Any discussion before we take a vote? Councilmember Oxiger.
Yeah, I think the point is well taken that we do need to be looking at these sea rise issues. As anybody in the south end knows, Redondo is experiencing, 2 or 3 instances a year where we have water coming up and it's impacting some of the low-lying areas. And so I think that anything that we're looking at going forward should definitely be taking sea level rise into account.
Councilmember Harris.
Yeah.
And then I see you, Deputy Mayor Buxton.
This simply has to become standard practice. Every engineering task that we accomplish going forward must have a review of sea level rise. That's all there is to it. I look at the work we did on the bulkhead, and I'm like, okay, that's it.
Deputy Mayor Buxton.
It does say that it's part of the scope of work is addressing flooding impacts to the Des Moines Creek Beach Park. And so I feel like that's kind of an umbrella phrase that covers not only sea level rise, but stormwater impacts for the creek, and it's an umbrella phrase. So I feel like it's already covered in the scope there.
City Manager Mathias.
Okay, to reassure council that at this stage, that 10%, that would be preliminary to evaluating sea level rise, which is inherent in all projects we do that might be impacted by that.
Sure, but that wasn't my amendment. I just said at some point during the design, during their scope of work.
But Councilmember Harris, this is only for the 10% at this juncture.
No, we're voting on the task list. I'm just saying that at some point in their review and engineering, they should provide a sea level rise impact component to their work that says, here's what we can predict, or here's what we might expect. We have to have a range to think about, and it has to be in every project we do from this point forward, whether it be sewer, anything. That's it.
Councilmember Pennington?
So I guess I have a question on the seawall project with the marina and the work that's been going on down there. I remember the tour with the captain of the port with the Coast Guard talking about hardening, and that was a number of years ago. And the hardening specifically related to the rising sea level, and it was so I was under the impression, and my question is with these other projects that we've completed, was that a part of the project, the sea level rise? And so is it a standard, and I know you answered this earlier, but is it a standard matrix that gets measured? And I think it really came forward a few years ago when we talked with the Coast Guard.
Yeah, Kai, would you like to address that for the bulk? I think there's a general and growing recognition among all the disciplines involved in construction, development, design, that climate change, sea level rise are all critical elements that need to be considered as we build projects moving forward. So Kai, could you talk about the bulkhead with that?
Yeah, so the bulkhead was designed with the, all of the, taking into account all of the king tide in the record. So we did look at, all of the storm and how to prevent that. And as you can see, the existing, after we completed the bulkhead, there was 2 feet of the pedestrian barrier that was added to the bulkhead that was taller than the previous bulkhead. But the floor of the marina, the floor was kept the same. Increasing the seawall would require a significant amount of import material to raise the floor of the marina, and that wasn't a consideration due to the budget that we have.
But what we did do was, though, create an outline of a raised amount to prevent intrusion of any future.
All right, let's take a vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your right hand. I see.
Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry,
we have two
Councilmember
amendments,
Pennington.
So which amendment are we voting on?
So the one we're voting on is the second amendment, where the consideration for the rising sea levels be taken into account during this project. And, from what I gathered, that's gonna be taken into account later in the juncture. But he would like it in this current amendment.
Now, I would like it to be incorporated into their scope of work at some point in the design process, not 10%, 10%.
We're only voting on the.
We're only voting on the 10% though right now, and your amendment is, the question is we each have to decide, is that necessary at this point? And or City Manager Mathias, go ahead.
So we've, focused a lot on sustainability, on resilience, on looking at impacts of climate change, and in addressing those. And I think that if you want to start looking at inclusion of language or concepts into public works projects, that it would be much more effective, and I'm not sure it's necessary, but much more effective to do that on a comprehensive basis across all public works projects and consider that an environment committee and come up with legislation that requires whatever it is council wants to do regarding that, rather than do this project by project and start making it complicated.
I think that's an excellent idea, but this is the project before us. It's significant, it's iconic, and we got to start somewhere. So I would say, as with the windows, the storefront project, same basic deal. I voted for that.
But council members, please don't imply that this is not being done. This will be done. It will not be done originally in the 10%. We get more than that with council approval to proceed. That will occur.
All right, let's take a vote. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Harris. All those opposed? I see I see.
I was in favor.
You were in favor? Okay, I see Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Oxiger, and all those opposed, I see Councilmember Pennington, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. The motion passes or fails 2-4. All right, so let's move on to the original motion and take a vote on it. We've already had the motion read and seconded. All those in favor, as it is, raise your right hand. I see the motion passes 6-0. All right. All right, now we'll move on to new business. This time is for the sole purpose of proposing new business items that have not previously been before the council for discussion on a future agenda. This is not a time for questions about old business. Council members can submit a question or seek updates on previously discussed business to the city manager at any time. Do any council members have new business they would like to propose? Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. This is fairly simple. although the numbers may be unfamiliar. As part of everybody getting a port package, in the late 90s, the three cities all put sound requirements into their building codes. In 2012, Des Moines alone rescinded our sound code such that any new construction now does not have any kind of sound reduction. The other cities, Burien and SeaTac, did not follow us, and we, given the new missing middle housing, it is essential that every home, every livable unit have sound insulation that is equivalent to a port package. So my my motion is to reinstate the sound code that was removed in with 1539, basically to reinstate Ordinance 1407.
There wouldn't be a motion today. This would just be put to future consideration or possibly remanded to a committee.
Fair enough, but that's the deal. We should reinstate our sound code and talk about that in terms of our upcoming comp plan discussion.
Now, I can't recall, but there were some very valid reasons in some discussions I had with former council members of why they rescinded it, and I'd love to explore those. Councilmember Nutting, would you be open to remanding this to the Municipal Facilities Committee?
I think it would be better served, Mayor, if I may, to the Economic Development Committee.
Okay.
Fair enough. And yes, I would absolutely love to have this conversation.
Okay, so that's what it's gonna do, it's gonna be funded. Now, it's gotta be equated into what the workload is already and so forth, and that'll be a decision for that committee to make as how that gets aligned with, in conjunction with staff and what they're capable of doing.
Agreed, Mayor.
All right. Any other new business? Councilmember Oxiger.
I would like to take the city manager's recommendation up as far as, putting this through the Environment Committee to see about including discussions about sea level rise in any of our projects going forward.
I'm just gonna ask, is that the appropriate place? I don't recall that recommendation going to the Environmental Committee.
I mean, that's just kind of a council call. I think environment would be fine. I think that we have to need, once again, Environment Committee and the chair have to look at the work plan and figure out where that fits. But I think attention to sustainability, which this council and previous councils have completely emphasized the need for us to do that. So yeah, we want to be current in every possible way as a coastal community with what the risks are associated with the sea level rise.
All right, redirecting to the environmental chair.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, Mayor, I'd be amendable to that.
Okay. Sounds like it's being forwarded that way. All right. Any other new business? Seeing none, we'll start with board and committee reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Pennington.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for coming tonight and spending your evening with us. It's appreciated certainly by me. And and staff, you guys and Anthony, you put together a lot of information, and so thank you for doing that. And I learned a lot, and so thanks. I attended the Environmental Committee tonight. I'll refer to the chair to give that report. Bonnie, happy birthday. I know you've spent a tremendous amount of birthdays here in this council chambers over the years. So thank you for that. Thank you to your family for, you being away. I know Scott's here, but you had the two kids during those times, and thank you to them for sharing you. Thank you. Happy birthday.
We don't have Councilmember Steinmetz here. Councilmember Oxiger.
No comment.
Okay. Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. as Councilmember Pennington stated, the Environment Committee met this evening, and on our workload this evening was the Public Works yard remediation about 30 years ago. 1992 it was. They yarded out all the tanks. There was some groundwater pollutant going on. So there was 15 monitoring wells installed in 1994. And as Tyler commented in the meeting that it was in 2 more years and 2 more years. So we're down to that 2 more years kind of thing. We had an event. We're only down from 15 monitoring wells that have been given a clean bill of health, only down to 1 that's monitored on a regular basis right now. There's speculated that there was a one-time event or possibly some other leaching, which they've done some potholing to figure out where that's coming from, and a heat map to try to monitor that and come up with a better plan to help remediate the challenges there with the ground pollutants. And then our second order of business was the electrification, which was brought up last council meeting, of the Metro buses, and that staff is working on a possibility of placement of 1, possibly 2 charging stations as Metro looks to move forward with fully electrifying their buses and providing electrified service to cities that offer areas where they can dock a bus and charge it and be able to do their 150 miles on their first bus and drop off their bus and circulate buses. A diesel bus gets about 350 to 375 miles, and they can do an entire shift. With an electrified bus, battery-powered bus, they can only get about half of their shift done, and then they have to move from their designated route, causing delays to get another bus. With 1 close, we could possibly have quieter buses and, a smaller environmental impact. And then also, we were brought up with a nonprofit that's looking to get electrified vehicles down in the marina with a WashDOT match of an in-kind of $20,000, and they were going to bring both of those back to the committee with more information. So exciting news moving forward with clean energy and quieter streets. And that concludes my remarks, Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I spent a certain amount of time last week wandering around Hillgrove Cemetery, and I talk about it in terms of the pioneers in Des Moines, but my real interest is that it affords me an opportunity to wander around port property and take a look at the state of tree cover in the city. Every 5 years, the port has to do, or they say they have to do this thing called the Flight Corridor Safety Program, which basically means cutting trees that they consider that might be of some danger to pilots. Apparently, it suddenly became an imminent danger in 2017, and so one does what one can to take a look and see if they are living up to their commitments in terms of restoring the trees that they say they're going to replant, and what trees they have marked for cutting, because the fact is that our tree cover, our tree canopy, which is considered the most effective way to fight climate change, continues to decline, and that swath, which is sort of like the SR 509 forest, is one of the last masses, and I want to make sure that everybody's living up to their commitments on those trees. I was pleased that my colleagues voted to take a look again at our building code. Basically, the reason that it was rescinded in 2012, the thinking was that this is sort of a first-year college philosophy thing, that developers were doing such a fabulous job with new construction that those requirements were redundant, which makes me wonder if the codes didn't matter, then why did they need to be removed? And the fact is that Burien and SeaTac kept those codes in place, and they kept right on building houses just fine. And if you live in an area outside the boundary which is currently eligible for port packages, the FAA has made it quite clear. If you don't have a sound code in place, you will never get federal money to expand that boundary, okay? Because you've gone against the will of Congress. So it is in our interest, everybody in town, aside from health, okay, everybody deserves quiet. But beyond that, even if you are not in the eligible boundary, it is in your interest to support this, because that's the only pathway towards your neighborhood ultimately obtaining sound insulation. Sound insulation is something that is a human right. And one last thing, we have this notion, I've heard from actually our representative on START, what good is sound insulation because you can't have a barbecue? If you give a child or any human being even 7 hours a day of relief from the noise, you improve their long-term health outcomes, their cognitive outcomes, their cardiovascular outcomes, their pulmonary outcomes, okay? You don't have to make it 24/7. You just give people relief from the noise and the emissions, even part of the day, and you improve their life outcomes. It's a human right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Moving on to Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. This week, I had the distinct pleasure of meeting with a gentleman up at Wesley Homes, John Schellenberger. I think I saw him here earlier tonight. And for an interview, they have a small, like a television broadcast studio that they broadcast programming to their residents inside the facility. And it was really great to be able to sit with him and answer a long list of questions and talk about the progress that we're making here in the city and a lot of the fun things that we're doing to create a great living environment for all of our citizens and the residents there. So that was fun. I attended an interesting meeting last night that was given by, well, it's hosted by Quiet Skies Puget Sound. The presentation was mainly Dr. Chris Johnson. She had kind of authored or was in charge of gathering this report together in response to House Bill 1109 a few years ago. The legislature directed this public health report to be compiled. Also, I wanted to say I appreciated Councilmember Oxiger and Councilmember Harris also were there, along with our legislative advocate. Anthony Hempstead was there. There are about 60 passionate people attending and hearing this. It was very interesting information, and it's just one more message out there that says living in proximity to a major airport it has health impacts, and that seems like common sense. And I remember one night Karen Kaiser was here it was another issue, but I remember her just saying, we don't need another study. It's just common sense. We just need to move forward with what makes sense. But in this case, for example, Dr. Johnson kind of has to open every single presentation with a disclaimer that says this information does not prove causality. It's just correlation. It's presented, it's a list of stories and information. It's a literature review. But honestly, in moving forward, it would be so nice for her or somebody like her to be able to present a well-planned study. Now, nothing on her for this. She was told exactly how to prepare this study, who to get, how to put it together. So it wasn't designed by her, but it would be nice to have a study that did prove causality, to not have to open a presentation like that, discounting the information that you're going to bring. So that was my only, other than appreciating the turnout, appreciating the passion, appreciating the information, and I see that there's just a lot of passion in this community around that. So also, once a month, I meet on a Zoom call with deputy mayors from around the county, and so we met today to talk about the Blake decision and how different cities are approaching it, how they're messaging out into their communities. Some have draft ordinances just like ours, some have already passed them. I think the consensus is everybody knows that this is important, and the fact that that cities are moving forward with either compiling drafts or actually passing actions, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the legislators to do something. And so appreciate that activity. Nobody's happy with nothing. Everybody wants something to happen. So appreciated that meeting. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First of all, again, reiterate the same subject. Happy birthday, Bonnie. This city is fortunate to have somebody like Bonnie Wilkins. She does amazing work. I get to work with her almost on a daily basis, and she gets to tolerate me. But she does a wonderful job, and just the best wishes of your birthday and your year. I reach out to our fellow colleague, Harry Steinmetz. I know you're watching because you had a couple of opinions that you sent my way. And we just wish you well in your recovery, and we just want you to know that. On yesterday, the unfortunate thing is you can't be in two places at the same time. So the deputy mayor and I discussed the event issue, and she attended the Quiet Skies event, and I attended the Dollars for Scholars. This is a great event with great opportunities. It's one of the ones that council contributes to, and they really appreciate it. I will say the sad thing is, before I say that, is the 6 students that received scholarships were amazing. I was a little concerned about their choice of colleges because it isn't with the initials WSU. I won't mention the other one, but I mean, amazing young people that that were raised in the community, very passionate about their futures. They're far more advanced than we were. We're knowing what they wanted to do at that time. And it was a very rewarding experience, and I was glad to be there to support them. On the other hand, what was a little bit disappointing is there was several scholarships this year that didn't get applied for. And there was great opportunity. I'm going to try to follow up with the principal of Mount Rainier High School in particular, just to encourage him to take advantage, because there were thousands of dollars that were not used and will go to the next year, obviously. So it was a missed opportunity for a lot of our students, and I'm not sure why that is, but I want to help make sure we give them every opportunity we can. I want to remind everybody that on Saturday, we have a huge day in Des Moines, but at 11 a.m., we'll be doing a ribbon cutting. And the reason why we're doing a second ribbon cutting is because our legislators weren't able to attend the first one because they were in session. And as you could see from the legislative update, they had been a major integral part of finding funding to put this together, and they continue to do so. So it's our way of showing them our appreciation. So I encourage everybody to be there. And then from what I understand, all the other festivities go through Saturday. It's going to be a full day, and we're excited. The last comment I'll make is on the Blake decision, or as one legislator at the state level labeled the Blake disaster. I assure you, if the state does not take action and do their jobs in this regard, this city council will. And I just want you to know that. Our next meeting will be June 1st for a regular city council meeting. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn? I see Councilmember Pennington, seconded by Councilmember Nutting. All those in favor? Motion passed. We are adjourned. Everybody have a safe weekend.